Hello, hello, hello! Emery's Crime here, your fellow crime, thriller and mystery book lover. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today is all about 2026 thriller book releases. I'm going to split this video into two parts. So the first part contains my most anticipated thriller book releases of 2026. Then part two of this video is a ranking of all the books being released in 2026 which I have been lucky enough to read. As with all my ranking videos, I'm going to start with my least favourite and end on a high with my favourite. And my favourite book, which is being released in 2026, is so good it literally changed my life. I cannot stop thinking about it. It's going to take a lot to top it. I will stop waffling now and get straight to it. You may be aware that Jo Spain is my favourite author, so obviously I have to mention her in this video because she has a new book coming out. It is called Never to be Found. I have no idea what it's about because Jo Spain has written it, so I'm going to read it and I'm going to go into it blind like I prefer to do with most books. I haven't got an advanced copy of this unfortunately, but I will be keeping fingers, toes, everything crossed because I cannot wait to read it. I think it's going to be released in June and June is just too far away. Jo Spain recently swapped publishers, so she's now signed with Zafra Books, so I'll be really intrigued to see if that's impacted her storytelling writing, if the editing's different, so watch this space. When I'm lucky enough to read it, I will let you know. Karen Slaughter has book 2 in the North Falls series being released in 2026. Book 1 was mine and Michaela's in-person book club pick. I think it was June, July time, and I thought it was all right, but there was quite a lot of backstory. So I'm really excited for book 2 because hopefully there'll be less backstory and more excitement. In this book, Sheriff Emmy Clifton and her sister, who is an ex-federal agent, Jude Archer, investigate a new case. It is a brutal attack which shatters their town's fragile peace. Liz Nugent is back with the truth about Ruby Cooper. I have been desperate for her to release something since Strange Sally Diamond. From my understanding, Ruby Cooper is meant to have Sally vibes, so I'm hoping that it's not a copy and paste situation and that the story is completely different, but I'm sure Liz Nugent will not let us down and that will be the case. And fun fact, when we met Liz Nugent, she was asked about how she came up with a name for Sally Diamond and she spoke about how she liked jewels and she'd actually considered the name Ruby for Sally. How to Get Away with Murder by Rebecca Phillipson is a debut book which I have very, very high hopes for. The premise of this is basically a how-to guide from a serial killer themselves. It sounds like it's going to be really light and funny. When I was at the Eastern Crime Festival, we saw the author and she spoke about the book and she had a fantastic sense of humour. She was very funny. So hopefully that sense of humour transpires into the writing of the book. Queen Lisa Jewell is back with her newest book, It Could Have Been Her. The tagline of this is a missing woman, a dysfunctional family and a new dark secret. So consider me intrigued. Lisa Jewell just never fails. She is always so brilliant and I have very high hopes that this will also be fantastic. Ashley Elston, the author of First Lie Wins, her debut book, which was one of Reese's book club picks, has a new book coming out in 2026. I believe it's out in January in the UK and it's called Anatomy of an Alibi, and the tagline sounds phenomenal. It's "You gave her an alibi, now you're the prime suspect." I mean, consider me intrigued. Also out in January is Esther Is Now Following You by Tanya Sweeney. You're the love of her life, you just don't know it yet. Basically, it's a stalker thriller and it's meant to give baby reindeer vibes, so what is not to love about that? Another book coming out in January is Beth is Dead by Katie Burnett. This is a YA thriller and I personally think that YA thrillers are great palate cleansers. The premise of this sounds phenomenal. So basically it's a retelling of Little Women. However, it has a mystery thriller twist to the retelling. So I cannot wait to read it because it just sounds so unique and so different to the norm. Okay, so this isn't a thriller, but I am so excited to read this. It's called Super Nintendo by Keza MacDonald. So I love Nintendo. Nintendo Switch is one of my favorite things. I play it all the time. It's not something I really speak about much on here, but yeah, I love it. And this is just basically a non-fiction book about Nintendo and why we love it so much. And I'm just really intrigued by it. It's something that I would never usually pick up, but because it's Nintendo, I was intrigued and I cannot wait to read it. Next we have The Witch Trial by Harriet Tice. Harriet Tice wrote Blood Oranges, which was super popular I think in 2019, 2020. And I've enjoyed all her books I've read since, but none have quite lived up to Blood Oranges. A teenage girl is found dead and her best friend is charged with her murder. The case obviously makes the headlines. As the headlines scream for justice, rumours of bullying transpire into something much darker. There are whispers of teenage rituals, obsession, and a pact which has gone completely wrong. Next is The Waiting List by Matilda Wilding. Just as Liv's dreams finally come true, she is hit with a shocking diagnosis. If she wants to be there for her loved ones, she is faced with a horrific choice. In order to be able to live, somebody else must die. That sounds so good. I know I keep saying that about all the books, but they all just sound fantastic. I've not heard of this author before, so I think this might be a debut, and I felt like 2025 had some phenomenal debut authors out there, so hopefully that continues on into 2026. Next we have A Sociopath's Guide to a Successful Marriage by M.K. Oliver. This is one of those dark humour, witty thriller books with a murderous heroine, and I feel that this has been done quite a lot. I'm going with an open mind because I know that some people have read this already and really enjoyed it. And Alice Feeney has blurbed it. She has said it's a wickedly dark and hilarious debut, witty, wise and wildly entertaining. And I did a vlog where I looked at if we could trust authors reading books which authors had blurbed, and I enjoyed the book which Alice Feeney had blurbed. So if she enjoyed this, I have high hopes actually that I might enjoy this too. Next is Unreliable Narrator by Amrita Hall. This is me giving this author a second chance. I read her book, One of the Good Guys, and I wasn't a fan. I liked what the story was trying to say, but I didn't like the delivery of the story, if that makes any sense. Hope finds the story of her life in the pages of a best-selling fiction novel, and truth and fiction become blurred. So I am intrigued by this. I just didn't like the writing style of One of the Good Guys. So if the writing style is similar, then I'm not going to get on with it. But like I said, I'm going to go in with an open mind. Next, we have The Drowning Place by Sarah Hilary, and loads of authors have blurbed this. Not that I can necessarily trust them, but sometimes it's a good sign. It's book one in a brand new series. What I'm not liking the look of is how tiny that writing is. Oh my gosh, that is minuscule. 17 years ago, a school bus fell off the road and fell into water, and everyone drowned apart from there was one survivor. His name is Joseph, and the fact that he survived is a miracle and has haunted him and everyone in the town to this day. Joseph, or now Joe, is now a detective inspector and he is working on a case. Joe is called to the scene of a brutal and inexplicable crime. So this sounds really good. This is my bread and butter. It sounds right up my street, so I'm just going to have to get past the teeny tiny writing. So that's a handful of some of my most anticipated 2026 releases. Before I go on to the 2026 releases, which I've been lucky enough to read, if you've made it this far, I just wanted to quickly say thank you ever so much. And if you're not already doing so and would like to hit that subscribe button, it would mean so much to me. As I said before, I'm going to start with my least favourite 2026 release, which I've read, and end with my favourite. But before I do that, I wanted to tell you my current read, which is It's Not What You Think by Claire Mackintosh. Nadika races home one day because she is convinced that her boyfriend is having an affair. She arrives home to find that there's police everywhere and her house is cordoned off with police caution tape, and she discovers that her boyfriend has been murdered. I'm about 30% of the way through so far and I'm really enjoying it. I have guessed some bits, but that's not really taking away from the enjoyment, and I think I've got a lot more to come. I'm really intrigued as to where the story is going to go. My least favourite 2026 read, which I've been lucky enough to read, is Nowhere Burning by Katrina Ward, and this was actually a DNF, but I DNF'd it around the 50% mark, so I gave it a really fair shot. Nowhere House was built by movie star Leif Winham, so he built this house as a refuge to hide away from the world, but also to hide his crimes. Now, in the present day, Nowhere is rumoured to be a refuge for runaway children. I have heard so many great things about this author, and this is the first time I'm actually reading something by her, and unfortunately this just wasn't for me. There was too many POVs, I found it really slow paced, and I actually found the writing a little bit pretentious. I would definitely like to give this author a second try, but this one really wasn't my cup of tea. Next we have The Exes by Leodora Darlington. So this was an NRN, i.e. a not right now. It is a book which I might have enjoyed if I'd have been in a different headspace, so it's a soft DNF and I'm going to go back to it in the future. It's a romance thriller book mashup, and I just wasn't feeling the romance side of things. However, since having The Little Man, I have just read The Pumpkin Spice Cafe, which is like a Grumpy Sunshine book, so maybe I should give this a shot sooner rather than later, because obviously the romance isn't as bad for me as it used to be. Next up is The Secret Lives of Murderers' Wives by Elizabeth Arnott. We all have heard about the men that kill, but what we never really know about is the women who love them. I absolutely adored the premise of this because I just thought it sounded so different to the norm, and I liked the take of not following a serial killer but following their wives instead. However, I found this incredibly boring. I liked the idea behind the story, but the delivery just wasn't for me. I picked this up at Theeks and Crime Festival, and my friend Becky also picked this up at Crime Festival, and I was speaking about this in my November wrap-up, and she was saying that she has soft DNF'd this because she was also finding it boring, so it's not just me, Becky also isn't feeling this. I gave this 2.5 stars out of 5. Then one of my most anticipated reads was Caller Unknown by Gillian McAllister. This is an action thriller. Simone flies to America to meet her daughter Lucy because they are going on an American road trip. She wakes up after their first night to find that Lucy has gone. She receives a phone call where she is told to not phone the police. She then has to go to a certain location and do a deal in order to make sure that Lucy stays alive. This was fine, it just wasn't the page turner that I was hoping it would be. I found the pacing off, I found it was slow at times. I think this is my third Gillian McAllister book, and it's definitely my least favourite of hers. I didn't hate it, it just wasn't my cup of tea. I did receive a minor spoiler for one of the twists, however I don't think that impacted my enjoyment of the story, and I did feel like the second half was better than the first half. I gave this 3 stars out of 5. Next up is Welcome to the Family by Kate Gray. I have all her books on my TBR, but this is the only one I've actually read so far. Rosie is head over heels in love with her boyfriend Theo. They go abroad on holiday with Theo's family at Theo's family's holiday home. Fenna Fraser has been part of the family for years. She is a little jealous that Rosie gets such a warm welcoming from the family. She also is a bit suspicious of Rosie too. This was a light, easy read where not much brain power is required. It would be perfect for reading by the pool or on the beach. It was quite an addictive read. The twists were nothing special, but overall I quite enjoyed it and I gave it 3.5 stars out of 5. Next is Grace by A.M. Shine. I love The Watchers by this author, so when I heard that he had a new book coming out, I was desperate to read it. It's a gothic folk horror style book. Grace never knew where she came from. However, one day she receives a mystery phone call which takes her back to a lonely island. In this island, the locals believe that the dark times are far behind them. How wrong they are. This is a little different to the norm, but I thoroughly enjoyed it. I absolutely ate it up. I think I binged it in like 2 sittings. I didn't love it as much as The Watchers, but I still thought it was great and I gave it 4 stars out of 5. Next up is The Ice Angels by Caroline Mitchell. This is book 1 in her brand new detective series. One thing that Caroline Mitchell is fantastic at doing is doing detective series where there's only a handful of books per series. 10 years ago in Finland, Detective Elia's daughter was taken. This case was called the Ice Angels case because a few girls had gone missing. Then 10 years later in the present day, something similar starts happening in Lincoln, so Detective Elia is brought over onto the case. What really made this a standout for me was the main character, Elia. She was kind of morally grey, she liked to colour outside the lines a bit. She was fantastic, she was so interesting. As it's book 1 in the series, you do get some backstory. However, because the backstory kind of fits in with the case, it's not boring, it really works. And I really enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars out of 5, and I can't wait to see how the author continues on with the series. Next up is The Pye and Mash Detective Agency by J.D. Brinkworth, where Jane Pye and Simon Mash start doing a detective agency course. As part of their coursework, everyone is assigned a case. Their case involves the disappearance of Nellie Thorne, but what makes this case really interesting is this Nellie Thorne is the 5th Nellie Thorne to disappear over the past 50 years. As with The Ice Angels, this is book 1 in a series. It was very British, very wholesome, very cosy, a little slow to start off with, but then I was hooked. The characters were so lovable. I cannot wait to continue on with the series when the books are released, and I gave this 4 stars out of 5. I only have 2 books left to go, so my second favourite 2026 release was Dissection of a Murder by Jo Murray, which is a legal thriller. Jack Millman is charged with murdering a well-known, well-respected judge, so he hires Layla Reynolds to represent him. Layla is super stressed, however, because 1, last time she represented Jack, she lost. 2nd, this is her first ever murder case. And 3, she is going up against her husband, who is 11 years her senior and is way more experienced. I love legal thrillers, but quite often I think that they're terrible, and I haven't read a really good legal thriller since Conviction by Jack Jordan. The author herself used to be a barrister, so I think that that really helped with the story, and I also felt that I learnt loads about the UK legal system. This was very nearly a 5-star book for me, however I guessed some of the twists and I didn't quite like how the book was ended. It's just a personal preference thing, so I gave it 4.5 stars out of 5. And now for my favourite 2026 release, which is also my favourite book, which I read in 2025. It was so good, it changed my life because I cannot stop thinking about it, and it's going to take a lot for another book to top it, and that is My Husband's Wife by Alice Feeney. Eden Fox is out for a run, she returns home and her key doesn't work in the lock. A woman who has a strong resemblance to Eden Fox answers the door, and she claims that she is Eden Fox. And then Eden Fox's husband confirms that this imposter is indeed, in fact, Eden Fox. I binged this in 2 sittings. If I hadn't have had my job to go to, I would have binged it in 1. It was so fast paced, I just couldn't put it down. I loved the twists, I loved the vibes, it had such a good atmosphere. It was just 10 out of 10 perfection. It was a masterpiece. I didn't think she would top Beautiful Ugly, especially not so soon, but in my opinion, this is so much better than Beautiful Ugly. This is her best piece of work so far, in my opinion. And of course, this was a 5-star read for me. I briefly touched upon Can We Trust Our Favourite Authors, so I've done a whole vlog on this. If you've not had a chance to check that out, I'll link it here. Also, have you had a chance to check out my latest video? If not, I'll pop it here. Thank you ever so much for taking your time to watch this video. I honestly appreciate it so much. As always, let me know what you think in the comments. Thank you. Bye.